Extremely carried. But should be better one more time. Thank you.
Everyone's here, right?
Well,
Yeah. I actually put notes. Thank you, everyone. Sorry we got a little bit of a late start. And that is because we convened an executive session to consider matters regarding the employment of a particular person or persons, proposed pending or current litigation and collective negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of the Civil Service Law. So if you want to know where we were, that's what we were doing. Please, everyone, stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We are in luck today. We have 11th grader Janessa Reyes, who will be signing the pledge. And she asked me to go slowly to help. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Janessa. How long have you been doing sign language at the school? And what has it been? You go to the mic if you want to go to the microphone.
It's actually a really cool language. It's I think we don't really realize how that they have their own culture too. So it's being able to communicate with them and helping them feeling more comfortable and exploring their culture too.
Wow. I'll tell you one story. I went to school here, and in third grade, I had Mrs. Pasapia, and she did a unit on sign language, and she taught us all the alphabet. And years later, at my first job at North Shore Animal League, there was a couple who was deaf who came in and wanted to adopt a dog. And they could not fill out the application because there was nobody there who knew sign language. But I had a working memory of the alphabet from third grade, Miss Pasapia's class. And would you believe that, like, little knowledge, which was probably terrible and horrible, they actually were able to fill out the form and they got approved for the dog.
I know at my job I've encountered a lot of people and they always are very grateful for that.
Good for you. So you're going to keep doing it
Yeah,
in college?
100%.
Good for you. Thank you,
Thank
Janessa. Yeah, go do your homework. Okay, so welcome everyone. It's the first official meeting after the start of the new year. The 23-24 school year has commenced, and the schools look beautiful and learning is underway. But of course, getting our schools open is not something that happens the week of school or a month before school. And I can tell you, all of us here have a front row seat to what it takes to open our schools for students. And we have an incredible staff, but I particularly want to thank central office, everyone in central office, Betty, Jamie, Chris, Carol, and everybody who works there, who work day in and day out, take few vacations. When they do take vacations, they are in contact with the school all the time. And the sacrifice is immense. And I think it's easy to forget, to be oblivious to all that goes into educating our children. So on behalf of the board, we really thank everybody here, but in particular, everybody at central office. Okay. So let's get started. Approval of minutes today. We have August 29th and August 30th. Does anybody have any amendments or questions to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, the minutes will be approved for both. Action 4 is our budget transfer. Is there a motion? Marianne, and then Maria is a second. Any questions? All in favor? Nice. Excellent. Best part of the night, report of the superintendent.
A lot of pressure. Good evening, everyone. And like Dr. McCary said, it's the same thing that the Nassau County superintendents say. The summer meetings don't count. So this is our first official Board of Education meeting for the school year. And we have had a great opening of the school year. Had a great start at our superintendent's conference day with some entertainment from our music teachers. I got to tag along with them. And they're truly amazing. So grateful for that opening and the energy of our faculty and staff and our leadership team. Our students have already transitioned back to life at the shore with ease and positivity. We had a great middle school back to school night 1 week ago. We have our elementary back to school night 1 week from tonight. And the high school back to school night is on October 5th. Very excited for that. And we had a very exciting milestone for our North Shore women's cross country team and coaches Levy and Welsh, who won their historic 200th consecutive meet last night. This on Monday night, rather. This team hasn't lost since October 15th, 2007, against Valley Stream South. This 200th consecutive milestone occurred at Eisenhower Park as the Vikings beat Locust Valley and Academy Charter in the Nassau County Conference 4 League meet. Congratulations, women's cross country, Coach Levy and Coach Welch. And I'll continue to call Coach Levy the Nick Saban of cross country. Although I might have to switch coaches after this past weekend. So great job. And that reminds me of homecoming, which will be on September 30th versus East Rockaway at 2:00. We met with Rachel Bowen, and I want to thank her for everything she does every year to plan for homecoming, to be the organizer. She is the homecoming general for sure, and she organizes all of us and it makes it happen. And we will have our carnival and our games and a host of clinics for our younger students, which is some of the best parts of the day. We'll also have a ribbon cutting for the new turf, which will be completed. We're very close. And I'm very excited to say Mr. Hall, Mr. Pappas, and I have been there every day texting each other pictures of where they are. So it really does look great. And I want to thank the community again for the support of that project and the board as well. And I think everybody will be very happy with it. Just a good example of what we can get done when we put all of our efforts together. It was a full community effort, the Booster Club, the board, and our parents. Thank you. We received some information a couple of weeks ago that is now public, and we'll have these students here in a couple of weeks. But I'm happy to report that we have 2 National Merit semifinalists this year at North Shore, Noah Lee and Claire Tao. So congratulations to Noah and Claire, and they'll be back with us, and we will have a formal presentation. You'll probably see their photo on the website tomorrow around. And we also do have some commended students, and they'll be recognized on the same evening. So we're excited about that. So congratulations. We've been, like I mentioned, finishing the turf. We're very excited about that. We have also been looking at some of our outdoor spaces and looking at grounds and doing what we can to spruce up. We do have some work to do. And between all the inside construction that's going on, it has been hard to keep up, but we are working and readjusting and planning. We're going to do some survey walkthroughs over the next few days and come up with a plan. I've said it, and I know some of the trustees have said it, that, we focused so much on the inside the last few years. that looking outside is probably part of the administration's thinking on where we need to go next with capital projects. But that's a larger board and community discussion for sure that we'll start to have. And that's a longer term conversation, but we're aware of that goal and we will keep pressing forward in that regard. I wanted to announce something we'll be sending out that last year we tried hard to get a property tax exemption workshop in the North Shore schools. We're happy to report that on October 5th at 1 p.m. there will be one at the Village Hall in Seacliff, sponsored by legislator DeRidge Whitten. So thank you, Delia, and we're really excited for that. And we'll be pressing that out, pushing that out so everybody has that information as a reminder, very important. We'll be doing some of our own workshops. I know Trustee Mosca mentioned that idea that we've talked about in the past of going through the land records viewer and looking, once we know the adjusted base proportions for tax, we can look at our own taxes together, and we're going to have an event here locally that Mr. Pappas and I run. Had a great meeting with the Gold Coast Business Association this week, and we're really excited to partner with them and looking forward to creating a collaboration where our students can intern and do community service at local businesses. We've been talking a lot about our BOCES programs, authentic learning, but really for all students, we really want to get those connections going and rejuvenate some of those opportunities for our students. So they're actually talking to their members. They're going to look at our course catalog, and it's going to be a great collaboration. And as always, a reminder to please shop local and support your North Shore businesses. I want to mention one last thing before we move on. Last week, there were some signs posted around Seacliff School that were upsetting to some residents and parents. And, you know, it's always hard when there are things posted not on school property. And because when things are on our property, we can take them off immediately. And so it was really important to collaborate with Seacliff Village on this and the Nassau County Police. And there are actually ordinances in the Village of Seacliff where things cannot be posted on any signs. And so we worked with our partners to clean up the schoolyard and move forward. And I do want to just reiterate that our district is committed to protecting all of our students, regardless of identity, regardless of background. I think you all know I always get personal. I did that on conference day, and I'll do it now for a second. You know, I think of my own upbringing and how this Protestant, now Catholic guy, you know, was surrounded by 4 Jewish friends growing up in Comac, and that diversity was so special and didn't make me any less Catholic. On the contrary, so I think that's important, and I really see our principals and our teachers like working to bring us all together, to normalize difference, to bring peace to our students, so that they can focus on learning and focus on that collaborative spirit that we've always had here at North Shore. So I'm really excited to see that work continue, and thank you all.
Chris. All right, so tonight we have 3 discussion items. We're going to be starting with the district goals and looking at a draft copy of what was created based upon our input last meeting. So whoever would like to go first. No, let's just start with, one at a time. Let's just start with the district goals. Where's my
I'll
stuff?
jump in first. I'm just going to say, I thought you did a great job capturing what we talked about. I thought there was a lot of consensus among what trustees had mentioned, but you seemed to synthesize it very well. I didn't really have anything to add, so thank you to the board leadership and to Dr. Z.
Doing just goal 1 or all?
No, all
3
3 goals. All 3
Okay.
goals.
So on goal 2, I had brought up maybe having a consulting firm, retaining a consulting firm. That had been in some of the information that was circulated. I have reached out to some people to get some ideas on that, and I don't know if we want to put that into the goals, seeking outside.
Expert advice under this second bullet point of goal 2.
I thought that explicitly covered that.
Yeah, I would just like, you know, the board to be on the page that we are going to see some sort of outside consultant, because it's a different, having someone come in and analyze is different than an auditing. And auditing just tells you whether the numbers add up, right? And whether we're keeping within accounting principles. It doesn't give you a view of where we could be achieving savings, where maybe there is additional grant money. It doesn't give you, it doesn't have an outside perspective actually analyzing what the expenditures and the revenues are. It's just the orders that we have just say that we're doing the right thing in terms of the numbers. And I think it would be valuable to bring in a consultant to give us a fresh perspective on the on the budget. Um, we, you know, I did speak with some people, and I'm continuing those discussions, trying to find like some of the appropriate people, and how we would, you know, RFP that.
So I guess my only concern about adding it in specifically is, as a board, we haven't discussed it. That this is a direction that we want to go. And also, I think goals are really supposed to be aspirational. They're supposed to be high level. So I would, you know, I don't want to put that we're definitely going to hire a consultant in there, and then we're sort of short on the goal if we don't decide that we don't want to. But I'm curious what other people think.
May I weigh in?
Maria?
Marianne, I actually had thought about this because I remembered your suggestion, and I was glad to see that in Dr. Z's incredibly well-written piece of, you know, distillation of the discussion, it did mention expert advice. I liked that it was open-ended because we haven't had a full discussion. I'm certainly open to what you've suggested, but I'm not yet hearing enough to convince me. So I don't think tonight is the night to do that detail, but I'm assuming we will have an opportunity to have that discussion more fully. But I'm interested too, since you know, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Hi, Chris.
I just wanted to jump in with just two thoughts. I know I don't want to go to the calendar yet. I know that's next, but we're suggesting the budget priorities and revenue challenges presentation like we did last year. I know that came up, and that might be a good time to talk about how we go about this. And then one other thought I just had, these are your goals, but one other thought I had is like, there are districts in New York and outside of New York who have gone through or are going through what we are right now. I'm thinking of Hendrick Hudson with Indian Point, other districts, Stony Point, Haverstraw, districts out of state that have gone through with other utilities that have left their towns. So I'm curious, and it might be something totally separate, but how they've handled that, lessons learned, and maybe they have worked with companies that specialize in like public sector revenue. But you know, same concept.
My only thought would be that we need, if we're going to do this, we need to do it sooner rather than later, because you're already working on the budget, right? And you're going to start having these budget priorities. If you leave this linger, you're not going to get someone in a timely manner that can really give us advice. And I'll just say again, 134 votes, right? I mean, pretty darn close. And if you really want to validate what we're doing, why not have an independent look at it?
Have any other comments, Marianne, before
No,
about the other?
that
That's
was
it. Okay. Anybody else? Lisa?
I agree with Dave. I really don't have much to say because I think you did such a great job putting our thoughts, and we were all over the place last meeting, and you made it so concise, and I really appreciate, you know, what is on here. I agree with all the goals. I really look forward to achieving them. And I had one question. I apologize not asking in advance, but as I was looking at goal 2, audit the district's infrastructure and prioritize capital projects, I was just thinking about all of the bond work that we are doing right now that is almost completed, and just wondering, and I know on the agenda later on is the construction management contract, and I was looking at that but didn't really see what I'm thinking of is how do we go back and make sure that everything was done properly? So is there a mechanism for making sure the air conditioning is working in every single classroom, making sure that the new security vestibules are working the way we want them to? I know I'm not on construction steering anymore, so I'm not in the loop on any of these things, but, like as I walk through the building, I just want to make sure that these contractors aren't leaving and then they're gone and we don't have we don't have assurances that everything is done properly. Is there some way that, like, do we ask all the teachers for feedback? Do we ask, all the cafeteria workers or any place that we did construction? How does that work? Sorry to put you on the spot.
Not at all, but once they reach substantial completion, then the architects and the engineers, and they walk through and create a listing of those things that aren't up to where they were supposed to be. And certainly if there was an air conditioning not working or something like that. So they do go through and review the project and review where it is, and then also critique basically what the end result was if it wasn't satisfactory. And then the general contractor, whoever was responsible, fixes it. So it's not that they could walk out and leave an air conditioning or something unfixed or undone properly. They do go through. The other thing is maybe getting the opinions, as you said, of the end users of the spaces. Although, as we've gone through the whole process, we've been getting those. So when they open up a new room, we've had comments. I didn't like the desks, which were selected before. I would have liked different desks. And if we can change them, we do. And if we can't, these are what was selected at the beginning of the project. Because it is when they put it together, it is very detailed as to what chairs are going where, what's happening, the plans, the pictures, the colors. But certainly as you come to the end, people have different opinions of what they would have liked after it's done.
Say something. So what Jamie's talking about is they do a punch list, right? And once we get all the punch list items off, then we can release the retainage. We hold a retainage until the project is complete and all punch list items are completed. Contractually, you can't get the teacher's input into that. You can only get their input as to maybe what we could have done better. If they've completed the work in accordance with the contract, if we've called for something that isn't as user-friendly as we would have liked in hindsight, that's not the contractor's responsibility. So it's governed by the contract, and there's a process.
I see what you're saying. I think I'm thinking of more of like, I'm in a teacher's classroom and the air conditioning is just not working. Those kinds of things. And maybe that teacher is, not as vocal as some other people might be. I feel like there should be some mechanism to gain that feedback, or like something little like, in a bathroom, a brand new bathroom, the lock isn't working on the door. Those are the kinds of things that I'm thinking of. Not
Some of
cosmetic as much.
Some of the items would have a warranty. You can have a warranty. If a piece of HVAC equipment wasn't working, you'd have a warranty on the equipment.
Right. I just want to make sure there's a way that you guys are notified.
I think it's such a good idea. And like Jamie said, we have been, as we've been coming closer to, completion in certain areas. But I think as we get to hopefully full closure, we're going to will it to happen. That's where we do more survey work with the faculty and staff, and certainly our principals. And, whether the remedy for that might be a different avenue or whatever the issue is, but we need to know. I think that, yeah.
I gotta get this started. I agree with my colleagues. This is a really ambitious and exciting agenda for this year to go through. Thank you for putting it together. Of course, you couldn't read my mind, and I had a light bulb moment that I said to you in a side conversation that I'm just going to bring up now because it didn't make it on, and I is a sort of a wish of mine that I think towards the end of our discussion, President Makari brought up the idea of some of the peripheral programs being included. And as part of that conversation, I was hoping we could take a look at our approach to enrichment in all the buildings and the continuity between buildings, and how we're discussing kids who maybe needed enrichment one year and maybe doesn't need it a future year. And the approaches are so different grade to grade. And I just feel like it's an interesting kind of you look like you want to say something.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Please.
No, because I do remember we were in the cafeteria and on Superintendent's Conference Day, and it
You
did.
had other
Jill-
things on your mind?
No, but I did try sometimes, and the board of course should direct on this, but I did try and work it into a discussion, maybe in an imperfect way. On the 25th, I know I'm bouncing around again, calling it a spotlight on specialty, brief overview of North Shore's new and specialized programs. I don't know if that works for that, but that's what I was trying to connect to there.
So we can talk about it then
Yeah.
in our next document. And maybe just like articulate it a little differently. I didn't
Yeah.
read that into that, but that doesn't mean that it's not a possibility. So thank you for that. It doesn't have to be in our goals explicitly. The other thing I just wanted to kind of highlight, and I don't know if it's necessary that it lives in this document, but I just wanted to bring to our attention that I do feel, and I tried to articulate this last meeting and maybe poorly, that given what has gone on in the profound changes throughout the district with construction, and there is sort of a special communication piece that maybe is warranted, that is unique to past construction, highlighting current construction, some of the rationale. Like, for example, we have in front of our high school fenced in units that are very obtrusive. A lot of people have questions about this and don't really understand why they had to be there and what service they provide to the community. I mean, we've done some dramatic improvements. And if you don't have a middle schooler in the last 2 years, you don't know what kind of groundbreaking STEAM opportunities are in this building. So we have some wins to share with the community. We have some unique questions that people might not understand if they're not attending these meetings. And we have also our future thinking of our wish list and the things that yet to come. So I feel like we need to create this communication opportunity with the community, because we don't have a way, or maybe it's like a Thursday update. I'll leave the mechanisms to you, but I do feel like as a goal, specific to our incredible expense with our bond, that we should be we should create a lane that is specific to communicating about that.
Okay.
Am I saying that okay?
Yeah,
I think I'm getting that.
That's very clear.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. That's all that I had to add.
With my colleagues, the synthesis of what we discussed last week is done well, and really nothing to add. I do, in listening to Trustee Russo's comments about Goal 2, I do agree. I think be very proactive about this and move as quickly as we can, as early as we can, get some expert advice or at least some direction.
Maria?
I'll just add a postscript. I do agree that expert advice is a wonderful idea. I think I'm just not in agreement about having an outside consultant. I wonder about expending more money to do it. I'm wondering if there might be other ways. I think both Jamie and Dr. Z, consult with their quadrant colleagues a lot, and you mentioned a couple of other districts that are going through similar things. I would like to explore those kinds of possibilities, which I also think we could get quick action on. And also Jamie's had a year now of looking at our budget and might bring his own new views to how we go
Time
about it.
expenditure that you would bring someone in. You would RFP it. You would get a price. It's like any other one-time expenditure we make when we bring in an outside consultant to look at any program.
So my only other comment was just, I think it might be a transition into the next item, which I was sort of looking at. There seemed to be a really great correspondence, actually. I was looking at the goals to say, okay, where are we talking about each of those? Again, it does go back to, where do we have that discussion about that, each of the sub goals? And I want, in the next section, I thought we might just make that correspondence.
Everyone spoke, right? I didn't miss anyone.
Can I just?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think just in terms of transparency, I think it's just important to highlight one aspect. Of course, this is all going to be posted once it's adopted later, but I think it's important for the community to recognize two things in Goal 1 that we're doing that we had talked about, which are Every year we do study, for those of us people who missed the previous meeting where we discussed this, but every year we typically review two areas of our program. And I think this year, the special ed review, as we had discussed, is due. I won't say overdue, but it is certainly due. It's been done before, but I think things have changed and it's important that we do that. And then the post-secondary transitions of what our students are doing after graduation will be the two that we'll be focusing on this year. I think it's important that the community understand what we're doing. Again, this is only a goal statement, so it doesn't lay out every step of how we do that. But I look forward to the administration bringing us through.
So I had just a couple of comments. The special education review, we're not including pre-K in that, right?
It's interesting because I do think as part of the review, if we're doing a whole system review, we would want to talk about CPSE.
Right.
So I did say K through 12, but yeah, it would be pre-K.
And then I guess goal 3, the community outreach with the focus on community engagement. I felt like the first 2 bullet points were very similar, and maybe there's a way to just sort of combine them into one. I also did not like the word professionalization because I feel like our communications are professional. What we were really talking about is like a greater sophistication to them or like a higher polish to them. And then we did talk about this idea of alumni. Was there a reason why we didn't want to include it as part of this, or?
No reason. I think, that I was trying likely to synthesize it into all 3, but probably bullet 3 as a subgroup that we would reach out to.
Okay.
But that is, I think, an important one to name specifically, and specifically how we've had conversations internally about how we make that more of an official thing. Like I was talking about NASAN, I gotta come up with a better name. North Shore Alumni Network. Dalia Rodriguez is talking about an arts alumni network. So we want to get it to, you talk about like the polish and the sophistication, like in that regard too. Even like a name for the group and having an official group.
I think what your point is really, really well taken, Andrea. I did see those as first of all, the more we can learn from our alumni and how what we did here affects those. I actually thought that was going to go more in our post-secondary transitions discussion, but I think it should be a wash throughout the year. The two,
So you could, though. You could. That's a great place to put it.
sure, I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
But the first 2 bullet points I did see differently. I think our communications are not just professional as they are, I think they're also sophisticated and polished. But I think the point was between the 2, which I know you agree with, which I knew the 2 points are really, the first one I saw as find new ways to reach people. And the second one was with our outgoing communication, do a review of those. So that's why I saw them as kind of distinct.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking is, bullet 1, we need to get out into the community more and engage the community. Bullet 2 is what we are pushing out. How do we change that, modify it, make it, and Shelley and I have talked a lot about this, like true organizational type branding and what we stand for, our mission, the centralization point that Trustee Cashman brought up last time. But then also, how do we get people, more than 3 people at the budget talks? That's bullet 3.
I think there are walls that we have either perceived and or constructed over the years about propriety and what should be and where we should have these conversations. I think those are mostly good and helpful, but I think we need to potentially evaluate those, as I mentioned last time, in trying to reach more people and not just, this is the place to get information. We're glad to have at least some people here and through the camera, hopefully many, many more, and the recordings that are taped and posted on the site, I'll say forever, but for a very long time. But whatever we're doing, we're not able to bring in as many people in the community. So whether it's through alumni networks, whether it's through leveraging social media, whether it's through, big community pizza party, let's do it.
Rather than professionalization, why don't you just say refinement?
Any other comments? All right, let's keep it moving. We're going to move to our second discussion item, the board meeting schedule and topics for discussion. I'll jump in.
So again, I really like the flow. It's not too crowded. It gives a little flexibility. I like the high level of student recognition, which is always fun, and spreading it out throughout the year because our students are doing tremendous things. I mean, 200 victories in cross country, not that I'm partial, but is certainly worth worth as much celebrating as we can. And these things happen all the time for so many of our students. There were two topic names that I had just a little bit of kind of a thought about. The first one is perks and pitfalls of technology. How do I say this? It maybe, I'll say, makes it a little too light because some of what's going on in technology and certainly the pitfalls with regard to social media, online bullying, distraction, attention spans are pretty
That's a good point.
pretty serious.
Why don't we just change it to the impact of technology?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And the other one
I'm
that
good
was
at English.
the other one was discover. I mean, this is, I mentioned this to my wife last night, and she was like, "Really, you're gonna make this point?" But it's a small one. Discovering their dreams, preparing students for life after high school. This may just be me, but I feel like one of the things that I love so much about North Shore is that it is not the means to an end. It's the means to what's happening right now. And so the idea of like discovering your dreams being something that happens afterwards, your dreams occur after you're here, I think is a little bit of a different message, even though it's subtle. These kids in first and second grade should be discovering their dreams and actualizing themselves and learning about who they are and so I almost see the transition to be a continuum. So, a continuation of their discovery, something.
But, these presentations are not completed yet, right? So maybe we should just put the topic,
Okay.
and then once you make the presentation, then you decide what the appropriate title is. 'Cause I don't want you to have to back into something you later
I'm
decide.
not concerned about the wording so much as just conceptually, I don't love the message of what you're doing here is preparing you for your dreams to begin.
Yeah, that's the word process. It's all about the process now and authenticity now. Yeah.
I love the spacing of them. I think it's great, and I know what you're going for, and I am already excited for them.
The cash one?
So I had a similar sort of semantic kind of suggestion. I personally, when we talk about discussion student achievement and list that all, while student achievement is so important, and I do want to hear about student achievement, it's something that I kind of mentioned last meeting. I think that there's things besides achievement that I would want to hear in a presentation, like engagement or opportunities. So, to me, it's not those presentations. I don't want to focus exclusively on achievement. I really do want equal thirds, right? Like the opportunities and, those were the words that I came up with, but I just wanted to push back on being exclusively focused on achievement.
Yeah, it's very analogous to what Trustee Lumar just
Yeah,
said too, and that the
that's why I was gonna-
process. Yeah, so that's an important distinction. Yep. Thank you. We appreciate that because we try to build that in, and having the freedom to do that is great. Thank you.
We add to the September 28th meeting a discussion about the possibility of retaining a consultant. I'll work on getting some ideas with Chris, because if you're going to do budget priorities in October, you kind of need to know whether if we're not going to do this, or we're going to do this, we're going to do this, if we decide to do this, we need to get going on it.
Just a point of order, I think that's a good suggestion, but it probably would be better in old business or unfinished business, and then that would be a topic that wouldn't require a response right away, and then we could have the administration think about it and come back to us if they agree with the recommendation.
But we're talking about the schedule and the topics now.
Correct, but you're asking to make a deliberate change to it. That's a
Yeah, that I
proposal.
brought up last week, 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago when we met. So if we're not bringing up changes to the topics, then why are we having this discussion? I mean, if you're really just concerned about the wording, that's fine. So let's, if we're talking about syntax, that's one thing. I thought we were talking about topics.
And I'm talking about procedures, so. Now we know what we're talking about.
Any other comments?
One thought I have on that is could we simply, move up the October 12th to the 28th, that topic? I think Jamie and I have a good initial sense of, what we're up against. But, and then we could, that conversation about any outside resources could come up from there. In there.
I just want to make sure that you're ready for that because you're talking about 2 weeks away.
That is the challenge with that. Would the board be comfortable with making that a two-parter, with making it, so that it is, and that might be helpful too, where we kind of have an initial, maybe the challenges is the first, and that's where we talk about the challenges are kind of the goals in that sense that we need to overcome, and how do we, what resources are we going to need to overcome them? So those kind of go together. That could continue into October 12th.
I'm personally comfortable with a two-parter. I think for those in the public who are not familiar, the diminishment of contribution from LIPA to our tax base is a very steep trail over 3 years, and we are entering the third year. So, as has been said on those videos that I referenced in all of our meetings, in the third year, you do need to get closer to the bone than you had been before. And so the first year was, involved some tough choices. Year 2 last year, as we said many times, involved some very tough choices of which the district has not made before. And I know for sure, without having spoken to you about it, that I can only imagine, but I guess I know by knowing you, how concerned you are about the cuts and the decisions that are going to have to be made to make this work in this third year of that diminution. So I would certainly say that a two-part conversation to have that, especially when there isn't anything on there, to me makes a heck of a lot of sense.
Yeah, and even though it is a week early, I think the space of the 2 meetings will be helpful, because I think we'll need that time to kind of, like you said, kind of review where we are in the lifespan of the LIPA loss, and also the context of the other factors. We're hoping, for example, that health insurance will look different this year. So all of that stuff plays together as we saw last year. So having the 2 meetings, I think, will be really helpful, and then allows us to talk about, okay, what do we need that we're not currently doing? Or
Maria?
It's great. No, I really like that solution.
All them problems. Who else?
I'm sorry, I had
Go
one
ahead.
more.
Yeah.
I had just a specific question. I alluded to it before. So I was trying to sort of map more the topics to every one of these goals, and I just wanted to make sure this, and maybe I really missed something basic here, but goal 2, second bullet, second big bullet, auditing the district's infrastructure and prioritizing capital project needs. Is that part of the budget priorities discussion as well?
no, that's a good spotting there. I did not line up a topic for that.
At some point.
Yeah, we can do that. That might, Jamie and I can talk about that. Also Carol, about, where that could fit best. I guess a question I have is for the board, like, is there a time of year that you think that would be best? That'd be
I
helpful.
mean, I do think it's nice to see how the year progresses because we might come up with topics as we go along as something comes up, right?
But that also, when we have okay, yeah. I mean, there's also the larger question of if we're even considering a new capital reserve, right? The timing of that. But I guess that we can't even think about that until we start having the broader discussion.
I think that for, we audit every year the grounds, and every 5 years there's a report on our facilities, a formal report that gets supplemented. But I think when you're talking about capital reserves, I almost think that should be a separate discussion from the budget discussion. So maybe there are discrete capital projects which will be integrated into the budget like we've done in other years. If the money, we've had that sort of 600,000 or so for athletics, maybe there'd be a discrete project that would be integrated into the budget. But I think a capital reserve or what we're going to do, a long range plan, I think that is almost a discussion in and of itself when you're talking about facilities. And I would say, let's get through the budget season and then let's finish the projects we have now. And then maybe at the end of the year, even in the summer, right? When we've caught our breath, maybe take a look overall, see where we are in terms, because we won't have this construction completed, what we have on board, until sometime during the year. Maybe not even till the end of the year. So I think it would be better if we kind of took a breath and maybe had that discussion down the road.
So that would seem, I mean, that makes sense to me, except it would seem then it's not really an appropriate goal in this current year. If we're pushing it off till next summer, do we want it actually to be one of the goals?
I think it's a great point. I think it's a question, obviously, for the administration to what you guys can handle. My thought was actually kind of in alignment with what Trustee Russo is saying, which is, look, long term, if we're going to float another capital proposition to this community, it has to have a tremendous amount of community involvement. It's got to have community buy-in. It has to be a reflection of what the community wants. But I think as a precursor to that, we have to internally look at our physical plant, our 500,000 square feet of internal space. That counts as second stories too. And third stories in places where basement. And if we can then go through that process throughout the year, that was what I saw this goal achieving. So the word audit here is sort of like an internal check of where we are, and say things, everything from we need beautification in these 36 areas to we need new internal paint in these areas to we have these septic systems that are not, to give us all the choices. And then I would say probably as a follow-up for 24, 25, this is what we internally found. Present that to the community in some way that you know how to do so well, and get feedback and synthesize something that works. Along the way, again, to Mary Ann's point, we may find that we have in that capital budget line, for example, it's possible that projects we're doing are going to come in a little under budget. Wouldn't that be nice? There may be some that are happening. I want to say it, knock wood, but the turf does seem to be moving along smoothly. And so potentially those things may come up during the year where you find you have certain funds available in a capital project line that could come to bear on the choices you make from a capital projects perspective. But that doesn't, to me, isn't analogous with a full audit that I think is what we had talked about and what I felt you were proposing.
Just to clarify for me, sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to jump in, but
No, please.
there isn't necessarily a one-to-one correspondence with each goal and a board topic. It's completely appropriate. Both Marianne and Dave have been very convincing to me. That is a goal, but it is not. It is going to be executed in a very different way than a public discussion necessarily. It will be coming up over the course of the year.
I think that's a good distinction, and that is a good point. I think with the goal one goals, sub goals, those tend to translate almost directly, and then the others, some are, I think what Dave said about it being internal, and then we would report to you, in maybe new and old business that might come up. The only other area where I thought it might come up, and we can decide this later on, is that end of year report, which is it can be like a catch-all. You know, it'll focus a lot on the North Shore journey, the strategic plan work, but also we can bring in a short discussion on facilities, and at the very least, the process that we're going to propose to follow as we go into 24, 25.
So, in the spirit of this discussion about facilities, and this could also be in the end of year report if deemed appropriate, but we don't have in this calendar, inspired by this recent discourse, I didn't even consider it, an update for the community about construction and what we're doing and what we've been doing. And, you know, I wonder if that's not something that we wouldn't want to consider. Um,
No, no,
I just had
we're
one-
working on our
on
choreography.
I had one quick thought, and this actually goes back to an idea that you had last year about security. And we had, you know, a great morning coffee with somebody who's here tonight, Mr. Glennon. And it was kind of, it accomplished the goal, but not in a board meeting, but a different forum. But maybe there's another public meeting we could have that's not a board meeting where we talk about construction and it's just kind of a forum.
I do love that idea. Given our board goals, proposed board goals about communication, I do see the inherent obstacles in people's availability and also the benefit of a recorded sort of opportunity, because I know that they are very much utilized. So I just, like I said, you know, we've invested so much and done so much. I don't know when the right time is, but I think in this context of our annual priorities, it's appropriate to bring up the question.
Okay. I just had a few, anybody else? No, we're good.
Real quick PS on what Lisa just said. I think it also actually ties back to our district communications, what you're talking about. It really is exactly would be a great improvement if we are more often communicating.
Thank you. I just had a few comments about the schedule. I think the special ed presentation maybe should be divided, just because special ed is so broad, and I don't want it to be rushed. And we also want to move away from these very, very long presentations. So that might be, if you can take another look at that. I also do really want to figure out a way for the trustees to sort of shadow students at some point, and whether that's one night that we talk about that, or maybe it's that when we're doing something like the fine and performing arts student achievement, we have a trustee that shadows. Then another, you know what I'm saying? That might be interesting. You're doing the technology, you have somebody shadow that way.
Such an interesting point, because when we do those presentations, in essence, what we're trying to do is like bring you into the experience as much as possible, but you see the limits of that. There's nothing like being, you know, in the schools and seeing things. And I know we've done that in different ways in this building in the past, you know, 15 years over that time. And I think that's a great idea.
And the third idea is that, you know, all of this is about students, but we so rarely hear from students. So I would love to pick a night that we devote to have inviting students of all ages to come and to speak to us about what their experience is like, what they want to see, you know, whether it's an ice cream machine or whether, you know, very serious issues, so that they understand how their school functions, the role of democracy, like in their lives, and that they feel that they have a voice in what's happening day to day.
Can I
Please.
just follow up on the shadowing and the bringing the students in? So when we're looking at these programs, what I feel like we haven't done enough is gotten enough empirical data, with the exception of test board, right? So I didn't feel like there was a lot of data in the FLES. I didn't feel like there was a lot of data in special ed 10 years ago. I didn't feel like there was even a lot of data in the IB AP discussion. And my problem with bringing in, I don't mind students coming in telling us what they think, but the student perspective on these curriculum items is that we cherry pick the students. So I could tell you all those students we did in the FLES that were college graduates, because they were all the top students in these schools. So we don't, and they didn't even take the elementary FLES program, which was really part of my concern. So, you know, I often feel that many of these presentations are more cheerleading than analytical. And that doesn't mean you have to find something wrong with it, but we get a lot of data that other people don't see. I think sometimes we don't look at the cost benefit analysis. Felt that way with the plus presentation. So I just want to make sure that when we're analyzing these programs that we're getting hard data.
And so, I mean, Chris and I have had a bunch of conversations about bringing in a diversity of voices, and I think that is one major goal this year. Correct? Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about even with achievement, with student recognition, we want to, think about that differently as well. And it reminds me of what we were talking about last week, our last meeting. I think it might have been Trustee Cashman, but it definitely echoed throughout, and that is what I think I mentioned Rob Klebicki at the time about. He would always say when we do board presentations, like the board does not want the parade, that everything's great presentation. They want the real honest assessment. So we will always rethink that, and we'll do that again this time.
Let's move on to our third discussion item. Maria's been waiting patiently. We're going to be talking about LAC priorities, and I know in the past we would have many, many LAC priorities, and I think maybe the focus would be lost. So Maria, I think, is looking maybe for some more focus this year.
Well put.
Thank you. So who would like to start on that?
Let me just set
Please.
the stage. So I did hand out at the very last possible minute. You all have a copy of the LAC final. Lisa, you don't have it? Oh, sorry. Okay. Of the LAC final report from last year. A lot of extenuating circumstances this summer, and I'm sorry that we couldn't get this out sooner. But there are a few highlights here, although you can probably get a pretty good grasp of a fairly extensive list of things that the group accomplished, and we have specific recommendations. I want to highlight a couple, but that's not meant to be to the diminishing of the others. As everyone knows, the legislative event that we tried to do this past year was ultimately canceled, short version, as a result of the delayed budget and then the inability for enough legislators to commit to the same date. So it was really just an unfortunate circumstance. However, it does go back a little bit again to the final goal on the sheet about increasing community attendance, because I think there is something to be said for just, thinking about whether the legislative event is still something our community wants and feels it would benefit from. The last one we had I think a very decent turnout, but significantly lower than the one before. So in my own personal experience, although I do not have exact data, which would have been good to have on attendance. So that's one item I hope we can really talk about, timing of that, structure of it. A number of these items are things that, by definition, our recommendations are that we have to keep monitoring. They are just things that will always be on LAC's list, but hoping you can take a look at everything there. But the other one that I wanted to just draw your attention to also is the electric school bus item, because in our emails today from NISPA, there is a communication talking about the zero emission bus transition. There's some updates there from NYSERDA, and it's a good read. And these are things that I think LAC can continue working on. And sorry, there was one more. Darn it. Forgive me. That I really wanted to draw your attention to.
Yeah.
Oh, well, no, but yes. I mean, they're all important. The other ones I wanted to mention were in terms of the cessation mitigation fund, that LAC did a tremendous amount of work. Lisa Vizza, thank you for reminding us of it every so often these past few years. The great news that, we actually have an application in, thanks to Dr. Z and Mr. Pappas, but, LAC is eager to pursue that if and when the time comes. And same thing with the reserve fund borrowing, since that, we just approved more the budget transfer last meeting to cover that interest. So I'll give you I think I might have rattled on long enough for you guys to look at this, and love to hear your feedback.
Problem with the legislative night has been a problem that's plagued us from the beginning when we were scheduling it. It's a scheduling issue. You don't want to have it before election day because can become a platform for candidates seeking re-election. So you're kind of strapped between that and budget season, right? So there's a very small window. And I think the interest has lessened with people coming with the canned questions. I think the highest attendance ever was not with LAC. It was with an off-site event where people could ask questions. I know the first time we did it here, we also had very high attendance because of the power plant and what was happening with the power plant. And I think some people were very disappointed that they couldn't just go up to the podium and ask their legislator a question. There were reasons for that were, sound reasons, but I think it tends to dampen the enthusiasm for the event. So I think if you're going to do it, I think we should think about a different format. Maybe not them up on the stage, but maybe more of a roundtable discussion and have topics, and people can ask questions on the topics rather than pre-prepared questions, because you don't want to catch a legislator off guard, because there's no sense in them coming here if they don't know what we're going to talk about. But I think that would be a compromise, right? And make it a less formalistic process.
There are questions. Oh, there are comments.
I mean, I personally am a proponent for legislative action night. It was one of the first events I attended when I moved here, and I was so impressed. And I do remember being able to write a question on an index card and submitting it, and I think my question might have actually been asked. And, I think it's important with what's going on with LIPA to have our legislators come here to our schools and, see the direct effects that it has on us. So as far as timing is concerned, what Marianne says makes sense. So maybe we can try to fit that into the equation. But I really hope that we can make it happen this year.
I should thank the board for making the effort to, constitute the new membership earlier. It does give us a running start, and I think we have a good shot at trying to schedule this appropriately in that sandwich season.
My feeling is that it's twofold. Number one, yes, I've been to many of them, both before I was on the board and now, and they are informative. It is good to remind our legislators that we're here and what our issues are. I think in the past few years, for several reasons, COVID has sort of changed the way people approach these things in general, but also the saturation of access that people have to our legislators. I felt like it was a lot of effort and work to bring something to the community that I'm not always sure the feedback from the community was that they necessarily wanted it. And that was as shown through their attendance. So if there are ways, I'm certainly not opposed to doing it. I think it's a worthwhile event. But if we do it this year, and we put in that amount of effort, we ask our great community volunteers who are on LAC to go, and we involve students, and we get parents, and it becomes a bit that if there's a turnout, we'll know we were right. but I felt last year was very tricky. In addition to everything else, I think where you touched on this, but because they didn't have a budget agreement for so long, they kept getting delayed, and everything got pushed. And so we had a date, we had things on the calendar, and as we all know, once you get into that, holiday season, people just aren't showing up. So if we can plan it, if we can find a date, if we really feel like the community wants this from us, then I think we should provide it. I know the volunteers are ready to go.
I mean, I'm all for it. I remember going, I think I learned a lot about sort of the big picture, how everything worked. So I'm all in favor. One of my goals was the tax exemption workshop, so that was already taken care of for you, so that's done. I also think we have to continue to fight for looking at this combined wealth ratio for foundation aid. We need more money, right? So any way that we can get more money from the state would be great. I also think you have a member who's very interested in how environmental change is impacting schools. So if you look at the wildfires, right? Like the schools were filled with smoke for a couple of days, right? Is there money available from the state to offset some of these anticipated impacts schools are going to experience from these types of unusual environmental events?
Would you say anticipated or unanticipated? I mean, it's who previously would have thought Canadian wildfires would fill our schools with smoke? Okay.
I just have a couple comments. Thank you as always, for the work that went into this. It's just so impressive what people are giving back to the community and articulate and well planned. In terms of the legislative event, I do think it's worth the exercise of planning it for the community. I agree with Trustee Russo that formatting it would be interesting to, working with the staffers to find out to the extent that we can bring the community closer and do more of a town hall format. I think we're ready for that as a community. I mean, we've said it all to each other already. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So I think that would be really interesting. And even the exercise of inviting them here is to the benefit of the community and staying top of mind. To that end, the timing is everything. And I think if you haven't gotten it planned before March 1, you may as well not plan it. Like, they're just too much in the weeds with the budgeting process. So if it can't happen between now and March 1, then I don't think it's probably worth the time. That's my opinion. Semi-informed, because I've planned one of these once. I also think that, and perhaps it's useful to open this up beyond LAC, potentially, to do that Albany trip and try and get, when you think about people who have an agenda, and we have an agenda of helping with this budget crisis that is ostensibly temporary, the extent that we can mobilize the community to show up in Albany and show, where we stand on this, it could be very beneficial to us as a show of force and show of strength. So I know that you got very much out of your experience in Albany last year, and to replicate that and even bring maybe even like a kid. I mean, I'm literally brainstorming right now, but bring somebody who's a high level student studying government, on the same trip could be interesting.
But I will tell you, Suffolk, they lobby every year for money, and they take busloads of kids up to Albany to do it. And,
So I guess that's lobbying is the word that I was missing in my little presentation here, but that's sort of exactly what I was thinking of, in terms of, what I'm getting nodding from. I just have one more point, which is, Maria and I have spoken about this offline, but the Environmental Bond Act, as a harborside community, we owe it to ourselves to be really, and the Environmental Bond Act is designated for municipalities and structural units like a school district. So we have infrastructure needs that would be directly benefited by some monies from the Environmental Bond Act. And I think that we are uniquely positioned for, and probably exactly what I'm talking about, #Suffolk. So I would love for that drum to continue to be banged. I mean, it's a personal kind of interest, but
Thank you, Lisa, for having drawn my attention months ago to getting more information about it.
Listening
There was
sessions.
a tour that is actually, it's running with state representatives going out with information on it. Unfortunately, the one on Long Island was in August, and the two of us who tried very, very hard to get there both had other things come up that prevented it. But it's really is, I know, it's a very high priority, like very much too. We can still follow up, and there are other meetings to go to.
Dave had someone.
I want to build off something that Trustee Cashman just talked about, which is, you know, serving as a liaison to LAC and being on LAC and seeing the lobbying process last year and working closely with DHC. There is a thirst by the people on LAC to engage the community. They need direction from the lobbyist about A, what's effective, and B, what's appropriate. There are certain types of lobbying that are not accomplished best through public action, and there are certain types of lobbying that are. And I think that I'd like to ask on behalf of LAC for direct information from our lobbyists as to how we can be most effective. One area that I had thought, which we talked about in Albany, was being able to bring people from Albany on the environmental committee to our waterfront to see what's going on down there and really understand what it meant for LIPA to no longer be there and what's left there and what it looks like. And that's something that is an achievable goal, but may require the action of more than just a one-time visit with our lobbyists. So I'd like to see that.
Great idea.
Andrea, you mind if I just a couple more?
Oh yeah, I thought that was
That was just the one building.
I like that one. I got so excited.
That's great. I had
You didn't need any more.
my own, like, I did the work. I may as well. Very small, discrete one. I think that LAC should have a direct monitoring of this new Seacliff master plan, which could affect us and could change population. I think we need to continue to monitor what's going on with engineers and potentially North Shore, two very large properties that the tea leaves in, well, you know, the tea leaves for engineers, but seems likely will be developed in the coming whatever period you want to give it. The TANs and the borrowing is something that is on the list, but has gotten some momentum. Let's keep the mo going. And that is my list. So thank you.
I am rushing.
I don't.
I gave them all. If we finish by 9:30, I'm making them go back into exec. Anybody else?
That's why I'm stalling.
Anybody else? Nope. Okay, we're good to go. So it's now time for public comments. I'd like to open the floor.
This is automatic, that way it is automatic. Hi, Lisa Vizza, Glen Head. First and foremost, I want to congratulate the women's cross-country team. 200 wins is an amazing accomplishment. I thought 100 wins was really amazing when my daughter was part of that team. But it just speaks to the excellence of that program, the continuity, the dedication of these young women who pursue this. I mean, they know what they're going and getting into with a storied program like that. So congratulations to all the young women, varsity and JV, and the novices, and especially Coach Levy and Donna Jean Welch. They're amazing. So that's my first comment, and I'm sure Neil is listening. But congratulations to them all. We should be very, very proud. I'll start with some comments about special ed. Thanks for pursuing this again. I would encourage, Chris, if you can find it, the last review. I participated in that as a parent and SEPTA member. It was before I was on the board, about 2 or 3 years before. Just to kind of read what came out of it, what the guiding questions were at that time. And even if we accomplished anything from the recommendations in that review. So it'd be very interesting to look at that, see if there's anything we need to readdress. And of course, include multitudes of stakeholders in this district who participate in the special ed process. And that's really anybody who encounters the special ed students every day, whether it's their general ed teacher, their special ed teacher, every therapist, every aide, actually anyone who kind of touches that student in their day. The families, who else? Administration, of course, SEPTA, and the parent members, actually, because not every parent member on the CSE, which is a mandated participant in the CSE committee, may also have some feedback as to what they see and experience in the CSE meetings. It might be helpful to know in terms of process of that committee. I would also, I don't know, you could throw this out there to our council, whether they might have some input. Since they come in when situations get a little frothy, when parents are having difficulties understanding, or maybe they have a different perception of what type of services their students should be getting, and it gets to a litigation stage. So maybe our council will have some input in the review. Let me see. Oh, and as you just spoke of, I think it would be really important to have special ed present in the annual presentation of student achievement. What else? Then you spoke of CPSE as part of the review, and I'm thinking about it. And what's interesting about CPSE, if people have experienced, CPSE is a committee on preschool education, and the district is responsible for kind of coordinating that for children in preschool who they suspect may have a disability, or they do, or have already been established when they come in from maybe early intervention. We have a wonderful group of people who take care of that in special ed. But what's interesting is all of those services are provided by outside providers, not North Shore providers. So with that understanding that we don't have that level of quality control of the instruction, that might be a caveat if you are going to include that in the review. CPSC provision has gotten very difficult if you ask the director of CPSC here in our district. Just finding providers, because just them getting paid from the state at the preschool level has gotten very stingy. So just finding providers, finding schools, center-based schools, like Millneck was a big one that a lot of our families utilized, and they closed for preschool education, special ed preschool education. So, you know, it could be an interesting part of that review. I don't know if you want to dedicate a big component to it, but maybe some of the parents may have some feedback. Maybe the director of CPSC has some feedback on, you know, what difficulty she has in administering that, or if she could use some help. I mean, you know, you can really open that up, but I don't know if you want to dedicate a lot to that. But, you know, you have those conversations as you go through the scope of the review. And I will say, so I'm done with the special ed comments. Thank you for LAC to look into this electric decommissioning fund, whatever you want to call it. I won't bug you as much, but I just want to say that Hendrick Hudson is receiving almost $12.4 million this year in this year's budget, because I went and researched it. And the fund in 2021 was authorized $140 million. So I don't know where it's all gone. You can find it. It's a very deep dive to go through NYSERDA to find it. But if we don't ask, we're not going to get. So thank you for applying. I can't wait to see what comes up with that. And again, if you don't ask, you don't get. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comments. We're going to move to Action 8 Personnel. I'm going to take A through P. Do I have a motion? Okay, we got it. Questions, comments? All in favor? Okay, aye, great, motion passes. Action 9, resolution to increase adult school lunch and breakfast prices. Last year, we sold 11,781 adult lunches and 1,454 adult breakfasts. So this increase in price, we we expect about $7,000 more in projected revenue. Do I have a motion? Okay, I heard a second. Questions, comments?
It's still quite a
That's
deal.
that
Yeah.
was my point. I was gonna say.
And I know, Dave, this was
An
something you
adult
brought up.
could eat more breakfast.
Is that true?
Well, you just said the numbers.
Oh,
were
right,
11,000
right.
lunches and 1,000.
You're right, you're right. All right, sounds good.
And the quality of the food that we're
Is-
providing here in North Shore is exceptional. It's an incredible bargain.
All right, all in favor? Okay, excellent. Action 10 is the approval of building level school emergency response plans for the 23-24 school year. We're required to do this by the state, correct?
That's correct.
And can you just, in
Oh,
two,
sorry. Motion? Motion to open discussion?
I don't know, I guess it depends on what we're saying, right? But I'll give it to you. A motion. All right, a second. Okay, fine. So can you discuss in 2 sentences the process for how these are developed?
So the district, the board has already approved the district-wide safety plan, and that is a more public and more general document. The school level plans are more confidential. The board sees them, and they are all developed by Mr. Glennon, our head of security, who's done excellent work here, and with our principals and our building level safety teams, with input from the district level safety team. Talks about everything from drills to regular emergency procedures to active threat procedures, as well as communication. Were some added portions this year that have to do with messaging out, and the district and all the residents and teachers and parents will be getting an email about how we would message out emergency information. That's new this year, and also instruction to students in emergency drills. We need to communicate out how we do that.
More than 2 sentences, but very thorough. Any other questions or comments? Sure.
And just a comment, just to say that this is my 3rd year on the board, so this is my 3rd time looking at these documents. And, you know, from the first one to this one it's really an amazing improvement. Not that the first one was bad, but just these are so comprehensive and so specific. I mean, we're talking about earthquakes and tornadoes and, you know, any type of emergency you can think of. And, you know, and the hazards are laid out, and every employee in the district is laid out, and what their jobs are, what students are expected to do and parents are expected to do. And I really appreciate I can't imagine how much time went into this and the thoroughness. It's really just such a comprehensive, complete, and exceptional document. So thank you.
All in favor? Okay, excellent. Action 11, an amendment to an agreement between North Shore and Savin. Do I have a motion? Okay, a second. Oh, everyone's falling asleep. You're trying to slow it down. All in favor? Or any questions or comments? All in favor? Okay. Action 12, I'm going to take action 12 and 13 together. These are our special ed tuition agreements and our special education service providers. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Okay, we got it. Any questions or comments?
When I first got on the board, there were a lot of contracts that covered periods in which we had gotten very far into the period of activity. We were retroactively approving things. We've gotten so much better about that. The 1 and 12 is a little bit in, it's fine, but it's a little bit in the wrong direction. We're approving it on September 14th. It was dated August 27th. The period covered started July 1. So just a very small note. It can't be helped in so many situations, but because we mentioned it so much and because it got so much better, I'm mentioning it again.
Noted.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
All right, all in favor? Okay. Any unfinished business? I'm going to just bring up one thing. When we were going over the plans for the construction, we talked a lot about like the counseling area and the psychologist's office. And I spoke a lot about how it should be soundproof and how they shouldn't look like fish bowls. And I actually noticed at the middle school back to school night that the psychologist's office was really a fishbowl. And it was all glass. You could see right in. And it turns out, I guess, during the school year, they put up, psychologist puts up like poster board on the window to cover it, which seems sort of silly because you have this beautiful construction. Like, there's got to be a way to frost that glass or put blinds up or something like that. It just seems like it's just not finished. And those areas really do need to be private. So I don't know if you can look into that. I appreciate it.
We can do that. Absolutely. And we have actually, CASA had a great conversation with Dan Doherty and I, and what other CASA groups have done in other districts to help support, like turning it into a true wellness center. So I think we could loop that in as part of those efforts.
Great. Any new business?
Did have unfinished business.
Ah,
But it's really just something, it's just a very quick recognition of the building tour that trustees took beforehand. I just want to briefly thank the building leaders, thank the custodial staff, and thank we saw so many teachers who were like, I just had to get in because they really care about getting things ready. So it was a good experience in seeing all of that. I really want to appreciate all the personnel that went into it. Certainly John Hall and Chris and Jamie, everyone who was there with us. And at the same time, I'm looking forward to next year's, which will be all done. All the work will be done. No more sheetrock.
Thank you for mentioning that. It was beautiful. It's my favorite night of the year. Any other new business? Okay, so 9:27. So is there a motion to move back into executive session?
Motion.
Oh, thank you. I got nervous. No one was going to say it. A second.
Second.
Oh, I got some friends up here. All right, so that will be great. All in favor? Okay. We will move back into executive session. We thank everyone for coming. We'll go back. Do you want to go back into the old room or stay here?
I think we should go back in the old room.
Old room? All right, we'll go back into the old room. Yeah, of course. Oh, let me give this to you. Okay. And I'm gonna give this to you. Oh, this too. Yeah, I'm done with it. I'm done. I'll give it to him. Okay, perfect. Thanks, Betty. You're calling my family, you're ruling.